Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Zooty Pickups. In today's video, we'll be talking about the Nike Pegasus 35 Turbos. So these shoes came out August 2nd, 2018 for a MSRP retail price of $180. They came out a little earlier for Nike Plus members. Limited quantity was available to purchase about 2 weeks prior to the official release. So initially I held out a little bit because I kind of wanted to see what people had to say about them. And it seemed like the consensus of the reviews was generally positive. So when the shoes came out, I went to my local Nike running store and picked myself up a pair. So the pair I have here is the black colorway. For men, there were two colorways. There was this black color and there was this other color called Barely Gray. I'll put a picture of it right here. As you can see, it's more of a mint colorway and it has that turbo pink racing stripe down the middle. Very flashy color. I preferred the black a little more, so I went with the black. The women have the same two colors as well, and on top of that, they get a third colorway. It's kind of like a Loden green, kind of like forest colorway with a golden swoosh. So I think that's a pretty sick colorway as well. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the shoe itself. So the big kind of selling point of this shoe is that it has ZoomX foam in here. This is the first shoe, apart from the Nike Vaporfly 4%, to get ZoomX. So previously, ZoomX was only available to a very small subsegment of shoes. Basically the Vaporfly family, the 4% and the Vaporfly Elites, which, you couldn't really get if you were a normal person. But I think Nike, wants to roll out ZoomX to the mass consumer audience, and this shoe, the Pegasus Turbo, is their first attempt at it. And it makes sense, right? Because the Pegasus is Nike's best-selling running shoe of all time. It's their most popular shoe. You can see it's the Pegasus 35 now. That means there's been 35 iterations of this shoe. It's been around since the 80s. It's just kind of one of their staple shoes. So it makes sense that this was the shoe to be blessed with the ZoomX first. But there is one catch here. The midsole is not 100% ZoomX. It is a mix of ZoomX on the top and React on the bottom. So basically you got two different cushioning technologies on the midsole of this shoe. But we'll talk about that later when we're talking about the performance. For now, let's talk about just kind of like the overall features of the shoe and what it has going on for it. So starting off with the upper, the material of the upper is very strange. I haven't seen anything really like this on a Nike shoe before. It's basically kind of like a plastic weave of sorts, like a plastic mesh. The best way I can really describe this is like on a tent, like the tents like that you use when you go camping, like the doors are made out of that like bug mesh, it's kind of exactly what it feels like. It's like a plasticky bug mesh. This is probably like woven a little tighter than those like tent bug meshes, but it's essentially kind of like what it is. It's very transparent. It's very ventilating, so that's good, and it's very light, so it really works well on this shoe, I think. But that is not the only layer here on the upper, because obviously that would just be like totally see-through and you can see your feet. Under there's like a upholstered layer that is kind of bonded onto that mesh, and there's like a little bit of cushioning in between the mesh and the upholstered layer to give a little bit of padding for your foot. So one of the main design features of the upper is this racing stripe that goes right down the middle of the shoe. So I read that the designers, took inspiration from sports cars, because this is supposed to be like a fast shoe. Fast sports cars have that racing stripe down the middle. Obviously on my colorway, you can't really see the stripe as well because it's tonal, it's black on black. But on the other colorway, where it's like mint and pink, you can just like totally see that stripe right down the middle of the shoe. It's a little too much for me, but whatever floats your boat, right? So the stripe is essentially a fuse panel overlaid on top of the mesh. There are some design elements printed on the stripe as well. You can see here, there's the swoosh, it says Nike, and it says ZoomX, it says Pegasus 35 Turbo. You got the little Nike pinwheel, and then you got the running track and the checkered stripes to kind of symbolize speed and racing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's some design elements down here on the tongue. So moving to the middle of the shoe, you can see that the midfoot lockdown is done with Flywire 4 on each side that go all the way down to the midsole of the shoe. On the lateral side of the shoe, you have this huge oversized swoosh that's printed on the mesh, and it dips a little bit into the midsole. And on the medial side of the shoe, you have a smaller swoosh, but this swoosh is not printed. It's like an overlay, because you can see that this swoosh is not kind of like translucent like the one on the lateral side. The medial one is a solid swoosh. So moving to the back of the shoe here, there's a very unique kind of like heel design going on. It flares outwards, and this is basically supposed to prevent rubbing when you're running longer distances, to prevent blistering and chafing on the back of your heel here. And from the running I've done with it so far, it's been working great. The heel counter of this shoe is internal. You can't really see it. There's nothing on the outside, but you can feel it in here. It's very rigid. It pretty much comes all the way up to the tip of this heel flare right here, to right about here. And it provides ample heel lockdown so your foot doesn't pop out of the shoe when you're running. There is a little fuse overlay panel at the very end of the heel right here with a triangular 3M design. And finally, you can see that the midsole does kind of poke out into this little sharp, little dagger-like shape here on the heel. Not exactly sure what the point of that is, but you know, all of Nike's like fast shoes of late have this little thing, the little like sharp thing here on the Vaporfly 4% as well, so it has to do something, I guess. So moving around to the tongue. The tongue is probably one of my favorite things about this shoe. The tongue is, it looks like a separate tongue, but it is actually gusseted on the inside, and you can see the gussets are attached to this elastic panel on the inside, so the tongue does actually move around a little bit, and because of the elastic panel, it does help hug the top of your midfoot very well, providing a lot of secure lockdown, especially when you tie these laces down pretty tight. In conjunction with the fly wire and the elastic tongue, you're going to get really solid lockdown, and your foot is not going to be moving around inside the shoe at all. And I think that's incredibly important for a running shoe so you don't get blisters. So inside the shoe, you don't have anything really special going on. You have a pretty basic foam insole with running and the swoosh printed on it. It's done in this really bright Volt yellow colorway, but otherwise nothing too much to note in there. So finally, moving down to the midsole, we have the combination of the ZoomX and React midsole here. I was actually kind of curious if the ZoomX was going to be on the top and the React was going to be on the bottom, or the other way around, or if it was just going to be like a mixed foam, or like, you know, like ZoomX wrapped in React or whatever. But now that I have it in hand, I can confirm that it's just 2 layers. There's the ZoomX on the top and the React on the bottom. It's just like 2 layers of foam, no mixing or anything like that going here. The ZoomX portion and the React portion both have this kind of like cool diagonal texturing going on to add kind of a cool effect to the shoe. And the ZoomX portion is painted while the React portion remains unpainted. One thing that I did find funny was that they do have some ZoomX branding here, but it's printed on the React, not the ZoomX. The ZoomX is on the top, so they printed ZoomX on the React. Going to the other side, we have the little Nike swoosh pinwheel fast logo. It says, engineered to the exact specifications of world-class runners, Nike running. It's kind of similar to what you see on the Vaporfly 4s. It kind of says the same thing. Here it actually says making runners faster is on the last line. So I don't know, maybe, I guess they changed the copy or whatever, but yeah. So moving to the outsole, or what we can kind of call an outsole. This is more or less a rubber overlay on top of the midsole. You can see the midsole React foam is just fully exposed right here in the midfoot. You got these kind of like pentagon shaped rubber nubs all over the forefoot and the heel of the shoe, basically the high wear areas. You got the racing stripe kind of coming down all the way down to the outsole here. And yeah, I think, you know, this is going to be okay. I think the biggest criticism for the Epic Reacts was that the rubber didn't extend down far enough onto the React midsole, and a lot of the React midsole was getting worn down. So I think Nike took that criticism into consideration and added a lot more rubber coverage on this shoe. So there you have it. That's pretty much the feature overview of the shoe. All right, so now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about what everyone is actually curious about these shoes. How do they feel when you run in them? How do they perform? And how do they fit? So, I mean, basically what this shoe is if the Epic Reacts and the Vaporfly 4% hooked up and had a baby. This is basically what this shoe is. It's like a mix of the ZoomX and the React foam. And I think in theory that sounds like a good idea, but the execution of this, I think it leaves a little bit to be desired. So let me put it this way. Like, let's say you have this like really firm mattress, right? And you're sleeping on it and you're like, oh, this is like too firm. It's kind of like messing up my back. I need something softer. So you go to the store and you buy this like really soft memory foam mattress topper. So you put it on top of your firm mattress and you lay down in it, and it feels really comfortable, but like certain areas that are more heavier on your body, like your butt and your shoulders and your head, you can feel that it like bottoms out, like it bottoms out that memory foam cushion, and it's like touching the firmer mattress. So you can like feel the two different levels of cushioning. That's exactly what kind of happens to me when I run in this shoe. So the two cushions here have very different response characteristics. And the fact that they're just like sitting on top of each other, like when you're running, so the ZoomX is a lot squishier and the React is firmer and it has a lot more rebound. So when you're running, the ZoomX, it's like super squishy. So when you strike your foot sinks into the ZoomX and the ZoomX bottoms out, and then you can feel the firmer React foam under it. So you can feel like when that cushion transitions between the ZoomX and the React. And I don't know, it's just like, it's very odd. It's a very odd feeling. Like when you're running and every step that you take, there's like a different initial cushioning feeling. And then like once you're further into that gate, the cushioning feeling goes from this like really like squishy cushion to like a firm cushion all of a sudden. There's like a cushion transition that happens. Like, it's not a gradual transition. It's like all of a sudden it's like cushy and then all of a sudden firm. And it was kind of odd to me. Like when I was running, that's like the only thing I could notice. Like I wanted to wait a couple of days to do this video because I wanted to run in this shoe quite a bit. So I ran on a treadmill and I ran outside for a couple of miles both. And both times, I could just really feel that the double cushioning. Like I could feel the transition between the ZoomX and the React. It was a lot more noticeable when I was going slower at slower paces, like over a 10-minute mile pace, because each gate was taking longer. You could really feel your foot going from the ZoomX to the React cushion. When I was running a little faster, a sub 10-minute mile, and each gate was a lot quicker, I felt it a little less, obviously, but I could still feel it. And that was kind of like the only thing I could really concentrate on when I was running. In theory, I think, it makes sense, right? Because like when you run and your foot hits the pavement for the first time, like you want that impact to be cushioned by the ZoomX. The ZoomX has the great energy return property. It absorbs all that energy. So all that impact is absorbed into the ZoomX. And then the React foam on the bottom, it's a little firmer. So once all that energy has been absorbed by the ZoomX, the React just kind of acts as a base for your foot to bounce off of and gives you that kind of propulsion forward into the gate. So I think, in theory, it makes a lot of sense, and it works well. I'm not saying it doesn't work well. And when I run in it, it feels good, but it just, it's just like a weird feeling, right? To have the two different foams, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it every time I ran in it. But apart from that, it's like a very comfortable shoe, and the shoe did work really well for what I needed it for. So they market this shoe as kind of like a fast running shoe, and I don't really think this shoe is exactly a fast running shoe. This is more or less kind of like your regular everyday kind of like training shoe. Like the Vaporfly 4s here, this is a fast running shoe. It has like the ZoomX, the carbon fiber inlay. Like when I'm running in this, I feel like I'm actually running faster. I don't know if it's like a stupid mental thing, but for some reason when I run in those, I feel like I have a little more pep in my step. They actually make me run faster. These shoes, while these have the ZoomX, it just doesn't give me the same feeling. And maybe I've been kind of mistaken just because of the fact that, like the feeling of this shoe, the ZoomX in this shoe is actually like bolstered by the carbon fiber plate. So, you know, maybe I was just thinking in my mind that that's how ZoomX feels. Like the responsiveness of the carbon fiber plate might have been just kind of like associated with ZoomX for me. So on this shoe, you know, the lack of the carbon fiber plate makes this shoe a lot less springy, a lot less fast. So maybe that's where, you know, my expectations are kind of differing here. But I did notice that this shoe did feel a little more of like a regular everyday trainer than like a race day kind of like fast shoe. But overall, I think, you know, it is a very comfy shoe. There is a ton of cushioning. Actually, I think there might even be a little too much cushioning. This is a 10 millimeter offset, meaning that, you know, the heel is 10 millimeters higher than your toe. So your foot is kind of sitting at like a slight incline angle. 10 millimeters is actually a pretty high offset. So when you're running, you know, your foot sinks a lot into this shoe. Some people like that, some people don't. I usually run in a Saucony Kinvara 9. This has a 4 millimeter offset and the foam is a lot firmer, so I don't like as much of an offset. I like more of a neutral kind of like flat shoe like this one. So this shoe, you know, it felt a little different to me, but in terms of just like comfort, I don't think any shoe can really touch this. The combination of the ZoomX and the React foam like creates this unparalleled, super comfortable feeling shoe. Probably one of the most comfortable shoes to have ever been made, like period. So yeah, that's enough about the midsole. Let's talk a little bit about the performance of the upper here. So the mesh upper, you know, it ventilates really well. Like I said, it's like almost literally made out of like that bug mesh material. So, you know, you can tell that it's gonna vent very well. I had no problems with my foot overheating. It is a little bit on the narrower side, like all Nike shoes. You can see that the midfoot is also very narrow. This kind of caused a little bit of a stability issue for me because I have like a wide midfoot. But for people with like mid to narrow feet, I think the shoe would be perfect. So let's talk about sizing. I normally wear size 13 in my casual shoes, but for these I got size 14s. But that's usually because for all my running shoes, I get one size higher. I need the extra room in the toe box. For when you're running, actually, it's actually good to have a wide toe box because when your feet hit the pavement, they tend to kind of, your toes kind of like tend to spread out, you know, with the impact of the stride. And that's your body's way of naturally kind of like absorbing the impact. And if you have a really tight toe box and your toes are confined in there, they won't be able to spread out. So that impact just gets transferred right into your ankles and your knees and your back, and, you know, throughout multiple miles of running, hundreds and hundreds of miles of running, that can start causing some major issues. So, you know, it's very important to have a good wide toe box, but this shoe definitely has that. So overall, for 180 bucks, you know, that's a pretty steep asking price for this shoe. At this point, I would say you're paying for the new technology fee, the ZoomX fee, if you will. This shoe, you know, it does have ZoomX and it does have some of the characteristics of the Vaporfly 4%. But if you're looking for this shoe, the feeling of this shoe, and you missed out on this, the Pegasus Turbo, I would say, is not a viable alternative. So, you know, if you're looking for this, wait for this. There are going to be more 4% coming out in the future. The Pegasus Turbo, then who is it for? I would say this is for more of the layman, kind of like everyday trainer, like everyday kind of like person and running enthusiast that wants to get a little more out of their runs. You know, they've been running in their kind of like normal shoes for a long time. They want to kind of spice it up a little bit, kind of throw in a little bit of extra technology in to see if it'll improve their performance. I think, you know, that's who this is marketed towards. So basically for runners who are looking for a little bit of extra something in their shoes to help them out. And I think in that regard, it does a great job. So yeah, I'm glad that Nike is finally bringing ZoomX out of their Vaporfly 4% and putting into more shoes. I would love to see ZoomX in more running shoes in the future. Hell, I mean, it'd be great if they put them into more casual shoes too, because I think ZoomX is a great cushioning system. So I am going to throw these on feet so you guys can see what they look like. And once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.